Hi everyone, this is Mindy from Lawnfawn, and in today's video, we are going to make a fall-themed peekaboo card. I'm going to have this cute little scene on the front of my card, and then my peekaboo is going to be that mouse jumping out from behind the bushel of apples. The images I'm using today are coming from the Apple-solutely Awesome stamp set. That's where these two mice come from. Then I have this sign. This is from the Open Me stamp set. I didn't end up using it, but I was thinking about putting it in my bushel of apples. Now, these two mice and the pile of leaves come from You Oughta Know. And then I have these corn stalks that come from the Happy Harvest stamp set, and I'm going to stamp them numerous times in #2 pencil ink. These are all stamped on 80-pound white cardstock using the jet black ink except for my corn stalks. I'm going to color my images using my Copic markers, which is why I stamped them in the jet black ink. And I started with E57, 55, 53, and 51 for my mouse. So all of my mice are going to be colored with these same groups of markers. This little guy is going to be the one that's jumping out from behind the bushel of apples. And because he's kind of facing to the left, I'm going to put my darkest color, my E57 or my shadow color, on the right-hand side and then blend out. Now this little guy is going to be kind of jumping into that pile of leaves. And for this one, I actually started with the lightest marker, which is the E51. So I laid down some color first, and then I went in with my different shades. So I did the E57 as my shadow, and I placed that kind of on his back side and then on the left side of the head, and then finished blending out with the rest of those markers. Continuing on to my mouse in his bib overalls, I once again laid down that lightest color first, the E51, and then came in with the E57. This time I'm placing it on the right-hand side, so I did the back side of the head, kind of under the arms and a little bit by the feet. And then my last mouse, I'm going to start once again with that E51. And because this one is facing to the right, I'm going to put my shadow area on the left side of the body. If you didn't want to use a 4-color combination, you could skip either the E53 and just use 51, or vice versa, skip the 51 and just use the 53. For my sign that I didn't end up using, I'm going to use E37, 35, 33, and 31. And because I really want it to look like an old wooden sign, I am using flicking marks. I'm not going to blend it a lot. I'm going to let the marker do the work with the flicking motion that I'm doing here. So that really gives it kind of those striations in the woodwork, and then just filling it in with that lightest color to kind of help blend that middle part in. I'm going to fill in the ears with R30 and also kind of add a little bit of shading to the belly with an R32, just adding that line, not really blending those two colors out. Then for the apple, I'm going to use R35, 32, and 30. Just a little pop of green here. I just grabbed a random green marker for the leaf on the apple. And for the overalls, I have YG 99, 97, and 95. I'm using that same green color combination for some of the leaves in my pile, and really all I'm doing is adding that shadow area to wherever another leaf is overlapping. Then for some red leaves, I'm going to bring in R39, 37, and 35, and I'm trying to space my leaves out so that they really have a nice kind of scattered arrangement of color. I'm going to have some yellow leaves, and for that, I will be bringing in Y38, 35, and Y32. And then I'm going to throw in some orange leaves to finish off my fall palette here, and that is YR18, YR16, and YR14. So after I have everything completely colored in, I'm going to take the coordinating dies for each, hold them down with the Post-it tape, and die cut these out, and then start working on other elements of my card. I have some apples die cut from the Build-A-Barrel apple set, and I die cut the apples out of guava ink, and I'm adding raspberry ink to try and do some shading. Now, looking back, if I were to do this, I would probably have started with more of ballet slippers for the apple, because afterwards, once the ink dried, I really didn't have a lot of shading to it. So I would start with a lighter color of cardstock for that. My leaves, I have cilantro cardstock, and I added on some noble fir just to one side. And then the stems are cut from paper bag, and I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue to attach the leaves. Then I'm going to work on tucking these stems into the apples. There's like a little slit in the apple that I'm just going to tuck that in. And then I can kind of tilt that stem up and add a little dab of glue to make sure it's secured in place. The barrel I had already die cut previously and put together from a different card project. So I have that all ready to go. And I added a little bit of liquid glue to the back and then starting to build up my bushel of apples. So I have two in the front there. This one's going to go right in the center. And then I do have another one that I'm going to tuck behind it. So I have a nice rounded barrel of apples. And after I add my glue and tuck it behind there, I'm just going to kind of hold it down for a few seconds to make sure it's really secured. Then I can start working on my peekaboo. So I have the Peekaboo Pop-Up, and I'm taking this large die and I'm going to cut it twice. So this first one, I'm lining it up onto some Cilantro cardstock, and then I have my second piece here with white cardstock. My first piece here, it has these two score lines. So I'm first starting by folding it in, and then I'll fold this one back, and I'm going to just reinforce those folds with my bone folder. And then for the green one, I actually messed up the folds on this one. I folded it the exact same way, and it should have been in the opposite direction. But it's a really easy fix. I'll show you how I did that later on when I caught my oops in this. But we do want to fold these. Now I want to make a little mark on here at 2 3/4. I can't find my ruler, so I just used my paper trimmer to mark with my pencil 2 3/4. And I folded my folds over so I was kind of in the middle there. And then I took the included hillside die and I lined that up with that tick mark and die cut that out. So here is my hillside that's going to go on the front. And that's kind of when the light bulb hit that I realized I folded it wrong. But really easy. I just folded it in the opposite direction and no one will ever know except for those watching. Now I'm going to go back to my white piece of cardstock and I opened up all the folds. I'm folding up a piece of Post-it tape and I'm going to place it behind my cardstock and kind of secure this down to my work surface. I want to add a cloudy sky to my background before I get anything attached. I am going to use the Slimline Cloudy stencil and I'm just going to hold that down with some low tack tape or washi tape. And then I'm going to take Moonstone ink and applying the ink over the stencil with my blending brush. So I start on the stencil and work my way up off of the stencil onto the cardstock just so I have that light hue in the background with the clouds. Then I can just pick up the stencil with that low tack tape, shift it down and over a little bit and do the same thing. And I'll work my way down the card doing that, just using some circular motions starting on the stencil and then brushing my way up onto the cardstock. I'm going to also add some color to the bottom of my hillside. And for this, I have jalapeno ink working my way up to the top. And then I'm going to darken that up towards the bottom with some rainforest ink. Now you are going to notice that the score lines are really catching the ink blending. I'm okay with that. But if you didn't care for that look, you could do the ink blending before you actually do your folds. I'm going to add a little more interest to my background by taking some Copic white ink, adding a couple drops of water and flicking this over the background. And then I'm also going to take some Blue Jay ink. I'm going to kind of smear that down onto my glass work surface, add some water, mix that up with my paintbrush, and add flicks of this as well. My one tip is to make sure your white flicks are dry before you do this. I noticed that they kind of came in contact with some of the white and I don't want to say blurred it a little bit, but it could have been better. So it works either way. I'm still happy with it. Now I'm taking my Peekaboo piece that I die cut from white cardstock and there's some folds and score lines in there. So I folded that arm down. They're kind of folding in towards you to form that triangle. And I reinforce the fold with my bone folder. I'm going to come back over to the front of my card and I'm adding some tape runner to that very left hand side. And I'm going to line up the corner of my base with the corner of my hill. Now I'm going to take some tape runner and add it just to that top triangle that's folded over, not the one with the long arm. I'm going to place this just a little bit below the stitch line and just in a smidge from the edge and secure that down. So it's only secured down by that one little piece of the triangle. Now I'm adding tape runner to the right hand side, that furthest fold, and then also a little bit to the green piece. And then I can fold this over. So the edge of my green cardstock is going to match up with the edge of that furthest fold. And then I'm just going to push that down and make sure it's secure. I opened up my Peekaboo and I'm adding a little bit of tape runner to the very top of my pop-up, and I'm adding that mouse to the very top. Then I'm going to bring in my bushel of apples, and I added tape runner just to the very bottom of it. And then once I open this up, I noticed that my mouse was just a little bit too high, so I'm going to carefully remove it. And then I'm going to add some more tape runner to the back of my mouse, and I'm going to place this positioned right where it needs to be so that he's kind of popping up from the apples, which is why I die cut my Peekaboo piece from white cardstock. Nobody is going to see it. Then I could just trim off that excess that was overhanging. And now I could finish putting my scene together. So that furthest mouse is going on with some tape runner, like he's reaching for the apples. My leaves are going on with tape runner. And then the rest of the mice, I'm going to be adding with some foam squares to kind of just pop them up and give them a little bit of dimension. I have a bunch of my corn stalks here that I'm going to just add into the background with some liquid glue. And I kind of played with the Peekaboo just to see where everything is, how it's going to look once it's open and closed. Now, one thing I will say to keep in mind is that where your mouse is when you're opening up your Peekaboo. Mine does catch a little bit. There is a little bit of where they kind of pass by each other, and it catches on one of my corn stalks. Now, it's not enough that I felt I needed to remove anything, but I just want to make you aware of that it can catch. I could have maybe added some acetate over the background or maybe to the back of my mouse, but I feel like everything is going to be fine. Now, it seems I kind of always get lost in creating the scene for my card that I forget about my sentiment. So, of course, I need to add a sentiment to this, and I wanted it to be stamped on the background. So, I opened up my Peekaboo card, and this actually came together really well. It laid nice in here where nothing was in the way of my sentiment. So, the sentiment I'm using comes from Thanks a Bushel. It's going to say, Thanks a Bushel for being a great teacher, because boy, my teachers this year are working hard and they deserve so much this year from me. So I think I'm going to be making a lot of teacher cards. I'm going to finish this off by just adding some highlights with a white gel pen. I added them to my apples and the leaves. I went around the mice and kind of added some white gel highlights to them just to help make them pop off the card just a little bit more. So there we have it. This is my fall themed Peekaboo cards. We have this great little kind of maybe orchard scene on the front, and then this mouse, which is one of my favorite mice out of the entire lawnfawn collection, is where he's popping out from the background like a surprise. I hope you enjoyed today's card project. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.